Hello and welcome to another stream of the Maturaexpress. We will see each other soon. So, hello again. Today we are gonna talk about note-taking skills, and which is here. And yeah, note-taking skills of the monologue and dialogue. So as you all know, during your exam, during your oral exam, you're supposed to talk about different topics and you're supposed to hold a monologue in front of an audience or whatever the task is, and a dialogue with your examinee. So I've come up with certain note-taking skills you should know in order to be able to master your exam. So we're gonna jump right into it, and first I'm gonna show you the overview of today's stream. At first we're gonna talk about the importance of note-taking, and then what should and what should not be noted. The third thing we're gonna talk about is basic note-taking skills, which I've divided into mind map versus bullet points, although I think mind map is not that basic, but yeah, it's not that hard either to create a mind map. Then we're gonna talk about advanced note-taking skills, and the last point is practice and demonstration of note-taking skills. And we have already some questions, but...
Well, it's not questions, it's just a comment, basically.
Okay.
I'll interrupt you if there's like a good many comments and tell you what the crack is, if that's right.
Okay, great. So the importance of note-taking. So why is note-taking so important? Well, note-taking is a classic. I think if you're in a lecture or something like this, or in the classroom, or during class when your teacher holds his speech, not speech, but of course, it sometimes is like a speech. It shouldn't be like a speech, but of course, how can you best develop your note-taking skills, and why is it so important? At first, it helps you in our context, in the oral exam. You have a certain amount of preparation time before your exam starts. So I think it's about 20 minutes or something, I'm not sure. But of course you have your preparation time and you know your topics. But what you don't know actually is the situation. So of course there are different situations, and although you have prepared your certain topic, you have to adjust certain things. For the monologue, of course, you have the situation that you're, for example, a guy who works at the PR department and has to hold a presentation in front of your colleagues or pupils or something like that. And task 2, you know all what task 2 is about. It's about a dialogue between you and your examinee, and of course the dialogue is supposed to be backed up by an article. And that article, of course, you have to read this article during your preparation time, and therefore it's important to know how to best work to get the main idea out of the article. But now back to the topic here. Why it is so important. At first, it helps you to structure a monologue and a dialogue. So actually, you're allowed to of course, prepare a sheet that says, for example, monologue, a sheet where you prepare your talker in the monologue. For example, how you greet the person, the audience, basically, how you want to greet them, what you want to talk about, and so on, of course, and helps you to avoid total blackouts, because with the help of the sheet you provided, or the things that you've noted down with your super note-taking skills, you're able to to better focus on the topics, I think. And if you're not able to make notes, I think that makes it even harder to avoid being nervous, I guess. So, in my point of view, it's a great means, a great tool actually, that helps you to stay more relaxed during your oral exam. Okay, importance of note-taking skills. Helps you to summarize the given article and your own thoughts. We've already talked about it, but it not only helps you, of course, to summarize an article, but also your own thoughts, which is also important, especially with the dialogue, that you bring in your own thoughts and not only rewrite the article or even just talk about the article word by word, and helps you to reduce the tension. We all already talk about that. Yeah, reduce the tension. It's almost the same. It's connected with the blackouts thing. Excuse me. And at last but not least, helps you stay focused on the most important aspects. Again, for example, if you have a mind map, we're going to talk about this later. If you have a mind map, it's always helpful that in order to focus on your main aspects, so or your subtopics, so you don't get confused by any other little topics or subtopics that might not be that might not be that important, of course, to your dialogue, to master your oral exam. That's basically it about the importance of note-taking. Of course, if you know anything about, or if you know any other important aspects of the topic note-taking, just write it in the comments below. And we're gonna move on to our second topic we're gonna talk about. Not topic, but actually what should and what should not be noted. So I've come up with these rules. Of course, you can add anything you want. It's just my thoughts, basically. That's what I came up with when I prepared the topic. So basically what I would suggest is you note first, which is kind of interdependent on the things you should note, is that you read for the gist actually. So which means that you only read for the most important things on the article. If you have several unimportant names, such as there is the main protagonist, let's call him or her protagonist of the article, and he has several brothers, it doesn't really make sense to note or to mention somebody like that. But if this person is important, of course, then it makes sense. But read for the main main message of the article and note it down. Try to evaluate the main message of the article and then note it down, because you don't have that much time to read the article all over again. So it's important to develop not only note-taking skills, but also reading skills. That's also really important. And the second thing I've come up with is note the name of the article and the publisher. I think that's always important if you're doing a monologue, and it makes actually makes a good impression on your examinee, that if you mention the name of the article, and you don't really have to mention the publisher, but it's also an option that you should consider doing. It makes it more formal, I guess, and more formal. I think it's good right word. Important assertions and statements. That is also connected with the main message, but of course an article has several paragraphs, and every paragraph, if it's a good article, which we always have good articles, of course, paragraphs have their own statements. Try to evaluate those statements, note it down, and maybe create a mind map or bullet points or other note-taking skills we're gonna talk about in a few minutes. And your own opinion on the topic. We talked about that shortly before. Note it down. We all know that you have your opinion, but that's a different situation. That's an oral exam, and you're nervous, and that's the exam is the thing you have been studying for, I don't know, 1.5 years. So be sure to note your own thoughts down, that you just have a clear and a neat overview of your thoughts, and then I think it's really easy to follow it through during your oral exam. And of course, keywords. What do I mean by keywords? Let's take the topics Olympic Games. If it's an article about the downside of the Olympic Games, you might have a keyword like poorer people, or poor housing conditions, or in Rio, for example, a huge topic was that they started to remove certain things in the city, including people, and yeah, just look for the keywords. It's really easy, but I think it gets neglected by a lot of students. So, which brings us to do not note. Unimportant information. I know that sounds quite, it's not that defined, but unimportant information, we already talked about it. You don't need every number or any other name that is unimportant for the essential information for the main message of the article. You can think about it like that. If you can leave it out, if you can leave the information out without changing the main message, or without having the impression that it changes the main message, or it should be in the statement, then it's okay to leave it out. So if the main message is still there, don't put it in there. So because you don't have that much time, I think, and it's of course more valuable to focus on the important things and not the important things in the article. So already mentioned that in the beginning, I think, is word-by-word transcriptions of the article. You can, of course, you can use quotes, but only short ones. And if the quotes are kind of support the main message of the article, then you can put it in, but you don't need actually word-by-word transcriptions of the article, so just leave it out. And whole sentences, don't write whole sentences. Of course, it's a personal thing too, but I think whole sentences make it more difficult to hold a monologue or dialogue, because whole sentence, of course, they tend to let the student start students. A whole sentence start helps the students to actually read from the paper, which I think it's not that good. Of course, you have been learners of English for not that long, I guess, but you should try to not only read from your preparation, your sheet that you've prepared during your preparation time. So, of course, again, if you know any other things that should be noted and shouldn't be noted, just write it in our comments, and we're gonna go back to it, and then we're gonna continue with the basic note-taking skills, mind maps versus bullet points. So, of course, last Wednesday I've already talked about mind maps, or the mind map. What is important, but when you decide to create a mind map, is that you think about the main aspects of the topics or article. We already had that before. That you divide the topic into smaller parts. It's always important to think in chunks rather than in huge blocks. And start creating a mind map. So these are the steps actually that I've listed here. And then very important thing for me personally, but should be for you too, is that be sure to work accurately. It's really important. Always with your note taking, don't make it too messy on your sheet, because you're gonna not remember anything what you've written if you don't work accurately. So that's very important. And of course, I've mentioned advantages and disadvantages here. Advantages are a clear layout. You have with the mind maps, and it's easy to create. And of course, there could be also more advantages. So, but those are the general ones that came into my mind when I thought about the advantages of mind maps. And of course, there are also disadvantages. You could list a disadvantages as that it takes longer than just writing down notes. Which, of course, if you write notes, you're faster. But on the other hand, if you're doing a mind map, you have a better overview. So, but I think that's really how you prefer it, or how you prefer making notes. So, That's how a mind map can look like. Of course, you have seen it, I guess. Mind maps are very common and very easy tool. I've created this one, of course, with a computer, not by myself, but it's not that difficult either to create it by your own, with your own hands. So in this case, it's about the topic communication and the media. I think it should be the mass media, but it doesn't matter in this. No, it shouldn't be. It's the media, because the subtopic is mass media, which you can see here. Mass media, and another subtopic of mass media is television. Of course, there are more than just television. And another subtopic of television are actually programs, but I've listed it like this, that it's documentaries, current affairs, programs, and so on. But of course, it always depends on how you want to separate the subtopics, or how you want to create your mind map. So, but it's important, I think, to work with mind maps. So, bullet points, of course, bullet points are also a very easy tool, but you have to consider certain points, of course. You can't just write anything, or a lot of bullet points will also confuse you. And the thing about bullet points is that you're kind of, you're prone to note only the most important keywords. Don't write whole sentence, we had that already, and use indents. What are indents? That's what I did here. So that's the first bullet point, and that's the second. And the first bullet point, of course, here is, or can be seen as, the main topic, and then there are all subtopics. So advantages are that, of course, bullet points are easy to create, and I also have a clear layout as the mind map. And the disadvantages are that the layout isn't as clear as a mind map, layouts, in my opinion, and they can more easily lead to confusion. Sometimes, of course, depends on how you create it. Okay, so having talked about the mind map and bullet points, we're gonna jump into more advanced note-taking skills. And I've listed again mind maps because I think mind maps are more advanced than bullet points, for example. But advanced note-taking skills, I came up with certain skills and certain things that are helpful even when you're studying for an exam. You can look those several note-taking skills. Actually, you can look those up on the internet too. Of course, use the internet like you're doing now. And we have mind maps. The second one is highlighting and color codes. You all know highlighting, but of course, people tend to highlight every sentence in the article because they think everything is important. But you shouldn't do that, and you should use different colors, which brings us to the skill, basically, skill color code or color coding, which is quite interesting and quite helpful for you. But this system needs I think some practice, because you have to get used to your own colors. What you can do as a help, you can also create a bigger post-it and just write each color, for example, in this case orange, and the keyword that marks that goes with this color. So in this case, it's the color orange you use for people, green for events, yellow for places, terms is colored blue, the effects are colored red, and causes are dark blue or navy blue, as you might see here. And I think that's very, very helpful. It also helps you to study or read articles and mark the most important things. But of course, it takes some practice. And last but not least, we have also symbols and abbreviations. So if you work with symbols, of course, that takes a little bit more time, but if you can create certain symbols that's always almost the same with the color coding. You can also create a symbol for people, or make a mind map that is created only with symbols. You always have to find out what works best for you. Maybe some of those techniques do not really work for me, but I've come up with these because some of them helped me during my studies. So symbols and abbreviations are basically just to help you working faster. So that's the basic thing about abbreviations. And yes, maybe if you have your own note-taking skills, of course, let us know about them. We're really interested to add a few of those note-taking skills to help future students and other students, of course. This brings us to the last slide, which is, or almost the last slide, I guess, which is about the practice and demonstration of note-taking skills. What I wanted to mention is that it's also important to start with a short brainstorming for the monologue. You can also use, of course, mind maps if you brainstorm, but the basic idea of brainstorming is that you write down things that you know about the topic and not think about the actual tool you use. Just note it down and then you can bring it in shape. For the dialogue, be sure to work with a technique that works best for you, that goes with the reading, of course, it goes with the highlighting, that goes with everything you do. You have to find it out and you have to practice it before your oral exam, because otherwise, if you're trying to find it out during the oral exam, you might come into trouble. So read the article carefully. Highlight according to your color code, if you have a color code, if you want to use color coding. Find out what the main statement is. Of course, you can only find it out if you have read the whole article. Sometimes you can, if you're lucky, if you've chosen the right sentence, you can also. But read the whole article, find out the main statement, and then add your own knowledge, which of course goes for dialogue, as I've already written down here. So, and I guess I created here, yeah. That's actually an example from a exam we did, I think, 2 weeks ago, I can't really remember, is an oral exam about sport and recreation, sport and modern lifestyle. And it's, in this case, it's the dialogue, task 2, dialogue. And you can look it up, this exam, it's with the exact title on the YouTube channel. So if you're curious about the, can't remember. If you're curious about the whole exam and how the actual wording was for the exam, just look it up. So, and I summed it up, this task 2, that the main statement of this article, which I've provided the link here, but we can also post it in the description below, but I think it's also in the video. So that's just for me if I want to show you, and I'm gonna show you quickly what the article is about. So the main statement is, healthy living doesn't only take being active and eating healthy, but also the right DNA. That's the main statement of the article, which I've come up with, not with the article, of course, with the main statement. And then add in your own experience or knowledge. And in my case, it's just, since I enjoy doing sports, is that, for example, doing sports helped me stay more focused throughout the day, and so on. Of course, there are more things possible, but it's your knowledge. Add your knowledge, and just show off with your knowledge. Everything you know, it's helpful for you. Everything you know about the topics, so it helps you to master the exam. So that's basically the article. I've already, yeah, here it is. Healthy living, how to live longer. So you have several, I think, yeah, it's better this way. You have several aspects or paragraphs actually, that you should start young with all the healthy living, and then it goes on about benefits of sports and exercise and bone health and all diseases and so on. And of course, staying socially active is also a thing that you could mention. For example, if you like hanging out with your friends and all the junk food. And then in the end, they talk about the DNA, which of course is one of the most important aspects, but yes, you have to figure it out by yourselves, actually. We can't help you there during the exam, unfortunately. But this actually was everything about the note-taking skill stream of today. And we're going to answer your...
Well, it was not really questions, it was more comments, really.
More comments?
There was no questions apart from one of them. We were sort of discussing whether or not note-taking and reading at the same time is hard, and if it is a special skill, and if it's better to go like by paragraphs or by like the full text or sentence by sentence. But I think we figured that out.
Yeah, so I think thinking in chunks is always better. So in this case, thinking in paragraphs, of course.
That's what I said as well. Well, we also discussed the own opinion thing. The participants in the chat also said that the own opinion is very important, and that it might even be more important than the information that the text gives you, because you might not be able to process it like correctly, kind of thing. But you said that as well. And one thing we discussed was whether or not they should like make proper like enumerations and be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I basically said was that it is fine on the sheet, that they just should not maybe say it all the time, because it might sound a bit unnatural if they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically that would be-
Exactly. So numbering things, of course, is fine too. So it provides you good overview of what you've written down. So thank you for your active participation in your. Thank you for your active participation in our stream today. And if you have questions, just let us know. I hope to see you on Wednesday or on Monday next week. Enjoy your evening and goodbye.
Bye.